Thank you, Alison. Hello, good afternoon from everyone. Greetings from Sumba, Indonesia. I am Mariana Silvana from Catholic University of Wetabula, together with my friends Rusmi Wiyati from Indonesian World Vision and Sarah Jane Manadai from National Crop Protection Center, University of the Philippines. Will present our research entitled Climate Change in Agriculture in Southeast Asia, a bibliographical analysis on gender and digital agriculture. Next slide, please. The idea of our research is the fact that climate change significantly affects agriculture system in Southeast Asia, threatening food security, rural livelihoods, and ecosystem resilience. Next slide, please, Alison. Gender and digital agriculture are two crucial yet underexplored dimensions in the intersection between climate change and agriculture adaptation. Based on report from the UN Women that particular groups are heavily affected and disadvantaged by, especially women in agriculture, in rural areas, and in developing countries. In line with this, there is a growing recognition that gender-sensitive approaches and inclusive digital innovations are essential for building climate-resilient agriculture, but evidence on research gaps persisting in the region is hampered by limitation. Due to this, bibliography analysis aims to map the landscape of research and gender and digital agriculture in the context of climate change in Southeast Asia, identifying key contributors, themes, and opportunity for collaboration. Based on those facts, we enlightened those into three research questions. One, who are active contributors for gender studies and digital agriculture under climate change in the last 10 years? Second, what are the dominant themes, trends, and gaps? And the last, what insight can be drawn from the bibliographic analysis regarding to the applicability of global North research to gender in Southeast Asia? Next will be presented by Sarah.
Okay, for the methodology, so basically our study is a bibliometric analysis. So we follow the PRISMA method using the Scopus database, and we use the keywords such as climate change, digital agriculture, women, and gender in the literature search. And for the inclusion criteria, we included 10 Southeast Asian countries, which are Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Laos, Cambodia, Singapore, Brunei, and Myanmar. And we also limited our search for 2015 to 2025 publication year, and the subject area is agricultural and biological sciences. And to generate the bibliometric maps, we use the Scopus software. For the result, Rusmi.
Thank you. So here is the result. The first results we generated from 8,491 articles globally, where we found that there are 7 topics being the top discussed on the quarterly publications: security, adaptation, drought, sustainable agriculture, climate smart agriculture, irrigation, and remote sensing. Notable keywords here is food security, which we'll see through the study, related keywords, and three specific strong keywords related to more advanced technology in agricultural adaptation to climate change. Also, it is also worthy to note that there is no gender-related keywords per se in these top 10 keywords we generated. This lack of keywords started to give us a clue that gender hasn't been mainstreamed well into this intersection of climate change in agriculture. Next slide, please. So to answer our first research questions, we looked deeper on who have been leading this field of research, and quite unsurprisingly, global North countries are dominantly leading the contribution from Southeast Asia countries are only about 1/10 of total number of documents generated during this study, giving the unique position of Southeast Asia region. This figure doesn't give much representation on the biodiversity and also other climate shock absorber areas, which are spread through both terrestrial and oceanic regions. Returning to our background information, farming is the most occupied livelihood in Southeast Asia. This figure gives further negative status of the importance of research exposure. Well, scientifically given to this sector, we'll see further about this vulnerability based on what's disclosed by the report. Next slide, please. So when we look into the closer into gender in the global agricultural and climate change agenda, we found there are 188 articles containing the gender keywords, and we found there are 6 quite related keywords from the previous generation. It covered, apart from climate change and gender, we found food security is still carried forward with climate smart agriculture and adaptation. When involving the gender aspect of the global agricultural climate change agenda, we found that gender is well studied along with climate change. For major domains we see here are led by gender, climate change, agriculture, and standing quite independently is food security on that green dots down there. Okay, let's move on closer. The gender in the Southeast Asia agricultural climate change agenda, with only out of 188 articles previously generated, we only filtered 38 articles relevant into this keywords. So while we see closer on Southeast Asia region, we see quite different landscape. We can see directly that this issue hasn't developed well, particularly that scholarly publications. We'll get back to this later on. In contrast to a well-developed study of 4 domains, as illustrated in global landscape, we see that food security is taught less under climate change in agricultural sector. As global research has extensively evolved on 4 major domains, Southeast Asia hasn't looked properly on gender aspects. We can point out clearly that there is only decision making down there with small yellow dots in the corner, being singled out as associated topic in gender studies. Things such as gender dynamics, roles, agency, and so on are not yet surfaced in the study. Moreover, agriculture, as mentioned, being the most occupied sector, also hasn't studied well in front of climate threats, let alone adaptation. In fact, we don't see that technical issues in agriculture is quite discussed along with gender and climate change. This has somehow clustered differently. We can see there as blue nets there, where in the upper corner, where it is indirectly associated to gender. There are so many missing topics in comparison to those generated in global landscape, proving how less attributed the local context of Southeast Asia in terms of climate change. To leverage this, we suggest to develop further on gender issue, ethnic, minority, and climate information. Gender issue revolve around roles, dynamics, agency, and so on, quite differentiating factors when we are looking into local context. We also see here that smallholder farmer surveys in the middle next to agriculture there, giving the idea of some organizational gaps are needed to enhance their adaptation. Regarding ethnic minority, I think we are all here agree that we have high diversity of ethnicity. Paying more attention to this niche might reveal valuable insights on how these groups have been adapting to different landscapes in Southeast Asia. Last but not least, climate information has been extensively studied as access and infrastructure to advance agricultural sector adaptability before climate threats rely heavily on this aspect. Moving on to the next slide, putting those nets into numbers, here is what we see at this stage of study. Southeast Asia isn't that bad in numbers, however, again, the depth gives us deeper understanding about what's being looked into. So finally, we are fully aware that this study hasn't reached the perfection, but it is clear to say that so many aspects of study have been conceptualized well in Southeast Asia. We're losing particular highly adaptability factors, which may work for improving our region's resilience. 3 points point out we learned from this course. So first, will be presented by Janet. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please, Alison. Okay, the first lesson learned is the importance and advantage of the study, bibliography in advancing the knowledge and foster collaboration. For me and Sarah, this is a new approach that we learned through this training and also learn from Rusmi. Thank you very much to use our first viewer and bibliographic analysis. Next.
The second point has been emphasized multiple times by other teams, and we single-handedly faced this during our research. It also was so frustrating that access to information is so limited, even across academia. Imagine to authors not such as stable or not, for example. Regarding point number 3, we realized that, of course, our review isn't as advanced as the experts, but we can see clearly from our study itself, showing that problems in Southeast Asia have been even surfaced and explored to what extent it is affecting our society. So, wise words say, knowing the problem is halfway to the solution. By start with changing this perception. Thank you very much from our group. Returning to Elisa. Thank you.